Well, good morning, everyone, Dharma friends. Welcome. We get another day, or at least another morning. Let's begin this morning with a familiar Hafiz poem. 15th century. Once, a man came to me and spoke for hours about his great visions of God he felt he was having. He asked for confirmation, saying, "Are these wondrous dreams true?" I replied, "How many goats do you have?" He looked surprised and said, "I am speaking of sublime visions, and you ask about goats?" And I spoke again, saying, "Yes, brother, how many do you have?" "Well, Hafiz, I have 62. "And how many wives?" Again he looked surprised, and then he said, 4. "How many rose bushes in your garden? How many children? Are your parents still alive? Do you feed the birds in the winter?" To all of this he answered. Then I said, "You asked me if I thought your visions were true. I would say that they were if they make you become more human, more kind to every creature and plant that you know." Once a man came to me and spoke for hours about his great visions of God he felt he was having. He asked me for confirmation, saying, "Are these wondrous dreams true?" I replied, "How many goats do you have?" He looked surprised and said, "I am speaking of sublime visions, and you ask about goats?" And I spoke again, saying, "Yes, my brother, how many do you have?" "Well, Hafiz, I have 62. "How many wives?" Again he looked surprised and then said, 4. "How many rose bushes in your garden? How many children? Are your parents still alive? Do you feed..." Power outage. "Do you feed the birds in the winter?" And then I said, "These wondrous visions might be true if they make you be more kind to every person, plant, and other living thing." So here we sit, again, or for the first time ever, sitting and breathing. Let us come home to the body, to notice its materiality, its aliveness. Notice where it touches the chair. Receive abide within the aliveness of the hands and fingers. Receive the aliveness of the feet and legs. Familiar, but always new. And there is our old friend, the breath. How close, how intimate, how loving can you be? There's, of course, no predicting what will happen in our lives. We make our plans and our best intentions, and then life unfolds. Each breath has its beginning, its rising to fullness, its decline, and its vanishing. Of course, the usual visitors of desire and aversion, of sloth and torpor, restlessness, agitation, worry, doubt, and the whole pantheon of emotions. Any of them could be present. And rather than going to war in opposition to any of them, we simply open further into a radical acceptance of them. We discover we are not defined by worry or fear. We're not defined by wanting or giddiness or anything. And this is where we take refuge in the Buddha, in that which knows, in the awakeness. We take refuge in the Dharma, in the teachings and the way things are. And in the Sangha, the long lineage of humans since the time of the Buddha, who have followed this same way. This way of sitting and breathing, of joining in community, of practicing being alive and awake. Each breath has a beginning. When we move out of the realm of concepts and ideas and into bare attention, where awareness meets the body, the great mystery of beginnings shines forth. The beginning of an in-breath precedes the rising of the chest and abdomen, leads into the sensations of breathing in at the nostrils, and this then transforms into fullness, which vanishes into decline, breathing out. And then there is ending. along with mindfulness, which arises every time the wandering mind is noticed, every time awareness of breathing occurs, along with concentration, which is the capacity of the mind to stay with one object. Comes an active curiosity. What's happening? What is the experience of this moment? It's like this. Along with mindfulness and concentration and curiosity comes tranquility, a mind which gets more and more at ease and unruffled. And along with these comes equanimity, that mysterious capacity of accepting things as they are. The fabric of our lives and our practice is woven through with love. The kind of love in which there is room for everything. There's room for our bright, shining parts and our less shiny parts, for the shadow. There's room for concentration and restlessness. There's room for restlessness and distraction. There's room for friends and enemies. There's room for smooth, easy relationships and those which are very difficult. Another thread of our life of awakening is compassion. We have mercy on ourselves. Whenever we're hurting, whenever I'm hurting, say it in your own verbiage. Whenever I'm hurting, whenever I discover that I'm hurting, no matter how, anxiety, fear, physical pain, recovering from surgery, grieving the loss of a loved one, grieving the death of a dream, grieving the difficulties, the horrors in the world. I aspire to hold myself in sweet compassion. Love and compassion are close companions, aren't they? In a way, they're synonyms. We rest in the first foundation of mindfulness, the first gochara, or realm, pasture of abiding. Knowing the body, as sensations, as life, warm, cool, places of pleasure, places of pain. Noticing the quality of mind. Is it expansive or contracted? Filled with ease, or is there some toil? Alive. Alive and aware. And please now let us become aware of where the body touches the chair. Not in some distant sort of way, but actually here in the body. Contact. Receiving and inhabiting the life of the hands and the fingers. Of the chest, the abdomen. The life of the jaw and the cheeks and the lips and the eyes and the forehead. And now noticing the prompted intention to let the eyes open. They don't open by themselves. They open because of some effort of will. This that we take as a self operating. And so letting them now, letting that intention operationalize, letting it happen. And then noticing mindfulness of what occurs, seeing and knowing it. Seeing. And I like to take a few moments to look from window to window, person to person. Every single one of us is walking our way through a lifetime. Hopes, fears, healthy, sick. Taking a peek over on page 2. Right now, someone's probably looking at you, noticing how that feels. We can't quite make eye contact here, but it's pretty close. We do need each other for reflection, for support, for care, inspiration. Thank you for appearing here this morning to practice together. Makes such a difference, doesn't it? Birch, would you like to speak just a little bit about the Sunday night gathering that you and Kat are convening?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, Sunday, 6:30. Be queer now. I think I mentioned it before, but there's such a beautiful sense of community that's being created. And after our meditation Sunday, there's a quality of, I'm sure as we all experience here, there's a quality of safety that keeps continuing to grow and deepen. And we looked at how our queerness informs our practice, and how our practice informs our queerness. And even though that sounds a little heady, there's a real sense of, as we all experience it, a deepening of connection, and how that connection creates such a settling in of the nervous system, and our ability to not just get locked up in identities with who we think we are, but how we express. It's almost like the dharma of identity. rather than just getting lost in the perception of who we are. It's more about how life moves through us. And it's really a beautiful, beautiful experience. So if there's anybody you know that identifies somewhere in the spectrum, including questioning, please invite them on Sunday evenings at 6:30 till 8. Thanks, Robert, for asking.
What a beautiful description. There are still a few places on the retreat with Don McEachern and I starting on the 29th, I think it is, of this month at Hollyhock. Jump. There's never an easy time to do a retreat. You got to hack it out somehow. Jim and I need to turn into pumpkins at 8 o'clock. We have a board meeting, PIMC board meeting. So, anything else anyone would like to share? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, no, that'll work. I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. Bye, David.
Good morning, Robert. Good
Hello,
morning,
Joe.
Sandra. I've noticed and recently the way the world has been turning has been it's easy for me to get wrapped up with my brain with what about this and what if that, and I've really come to appreciate and understand that where my comfort zone is, where I thrive, is not centered in my questioning brain at all, but it is in my heart, where I don't ask questions. I just have knowing. I don't I don't have worries. I just have acceptance. And finding that just recently has allowed me to walk in this life with with so much less ripples on the pond, for lack of a better term. And I just wanted to share that and hope that's of some help, especially with the way we're spinning around right now.
Thanks, Joe.
You bet.
morning, it's Denise.
Hello, Denise.
So, I have a question, I think building on what Beatty asked yesterday about preferences,
Hmm.
and maybe on the other end of things where I feel like sometimes I'm just like become detached or like resolute or indifferent rather than um, necessarily attached to preferences, but I think that it doesn't necessarily feel like a real detachment. It just feels like a separation or in some ways like a pushing away, but like the storm is still going on underneath, but I can pretend like that there's some level of like calm, or I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it does. In the Brahma Viharas, the four loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, each of them has a direct enemy and an indirect enemy. And with equanimity, we can be reactive and profoundly engaged in a certain way with everything, and we can, in a indirect sort of enemy sort of way, we can just not care. We can just have a lid of denial on, and so it's this is an art. Our lives are an art, and in Western psychology, there's some very useful notions about the way that we have ego defenses. We have psychological processes that protect us. Among them are denial, projection, where instead of instead of experiencing in something in myself, I see it in someone else, and then I can accuse them or admire them or whatever. So you're obviously right now quite aware of something happening that's a little ways out of reach, or that it's maybe more painful than is tolerable right now, maybe more painful than you have inner and outer support right now. And things that if they came in their fullness, you might not be able to carry out your responsibilities. And so these defenses are very important and useful. And it's also then why we seek out the company of Sangha. And in Western modality, we have, talking to some healer type of person or therapist. It's also one of the things that happens on retreats, of course, is as we get contained and held by the retreat, then whatever it is we're repressing will find its way to the surface. And that's part of the hard work of retreat. What do you think?
Yeah, that's helpful. I just, like I said, I recognize that sometimes mm, the what seems to be equanimity is really just turning away. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So, and That's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's essential. Yeah. Sometimes it's really essential. Funny, I'm having an ancient memory. When I went to Bodh Gaya in India a long time ago, the time I got the kidney stones, I was pretty alone there. There was only one. There was one other monk, a Cambodian man, who was he was very solitary, and he had learned. And I could never speak with him because it was only through a translator, and he was being quite silent. But I learned that I learned from my teacher that he had really developed a lot of mastery of concentration, and he would sit for long periods of time. However, this is before I'd done any therapy or any therapy training, he looked so sad. His every cell looked sad to me. And then I learned that he was one of a handful of monks who escaped from Pol Pot and the killing fields in the Holocaust of Cambodia. And he, I forget how, maybe I learned this from Manindra. He just never, it was more than he could deal with, and so he was basically living in profound avoidance. Now, why? Oh, another thought from way back when I was with Sujata, the fellow I did my guru trip with. A fellow came to do a month of meditation, and he was a TM meditator. He reported he had never missed a day in 15, 20 years. I mean, he was very determined. And on the retreat that he started doing at Still Point, where I was, there was an hour of sitting and then an hour of walking. And he really balked at the walking. He didn't want to walk, he just wanted to sit. And about the second or third day, he came in really, I was sitting in on an interview, and he came in really angry that you're requiring me to do these moving meditations is really ruining my practice. And it turned out actually that what was happening was that he hated his work, he hated his children, his marriage was dead, and he was managing quite effectively to avoid it. And after about 5 days, my teacher said you need to go home. Meditation is not helping you. Meditation is helping you putting a lid on something that really needs to be faced. So in our lives, how do we get enough support, and when is the right moment that we can turn towards stuff? And fortunately, this kind of practice doesn't blow us open very often, so we get as much as we can handle. But you are definitely right that it isn't equanimity. Sometimes it's avoidance. Well, I need to go. Thank you for coming. Very beautiful to see you and to be with you. Strengthening. Let us sing our lovely cacophonous departing song. And please unmute if you wish. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. What harmonies.
You all. Have a good
Good,
day.
goodbye, dear friends. Bye, friends on Facebook and YouTube.